Hurricane Ian leaves 2.5 million Floridians without electricity and $67 billion in damages. Meta says it removed China operations seeking to influence U.S. midterm elections. Mali says they were stabbed in the back by France. Over 60 Uyghur groups ask UN to discuss Uyghur genocide. Biden must say if U.S. behind Nord Stream gas leaks, says Moscow. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight: Hurricane Ian slammed into the coast of southwest Florida as a monster Category 4 hurricane Wednesday, bringing catastrophic storm surges, wind, and flooding. Florida officials prepared a huge emergency response as more than 2.5 million residents lost power Thursday. U.S. Border Patrol said 20 migrants were missing after their boat sank. 4 Cubans swam to the shore in the Florida Keys Islands, and 3 were rescued at sea by the Coast Guard. The National Hurricane Center said the eye of the hurricane made landfall just after 3 p.m. on the barrier island of Cayo Costa, west of Fort Myer. Bloomberg reports the storm is expected to cause more than $67 billion in damages and losses. In related news, the island nation of Cuba was without electricity early Wednesday after Hurricane Ian collapsed the nation's power grid. A special segment is coming up later tonight in our show. Keep watching Muslim News. Thousands of inmates are refusing to work this week to demand broad criminal justice reforms and changes to the state's prison conditions. The work stoppage began Monday after about 3 months of planning and organizing by inmates. The prisoners have help from the groups Alabama Prison Advocacy and Incarcerated Families United. Strike organizers circulated a message saying the roughly 25,000 prisoners in the state are in the midst of a humanitarian crisis due to Eighth Amendment violations. The Eighth Amendment of the American Constitution protects against imposing excessive bail, excessive fines, or cruel and unusual punishments. Prisoners say a lawsuit filed by the U.S. Department of Justice in 2020 did not solve the humanitarian crisis that has gone on for years in Alabama's prison system. Antiquated sentencing laws have led to overcrowding, numerous deaths, and severe physical injury, as well as mental anguish, the inmates say. Older adults in the U.S. are stuck in their homes as their aides seek higher-paying jobs, the Washington Post reports. The shortage of home care workers worsened during the COVID pandemic. Senior citizens had to wait many months to be assigned professional home care aides. It has threatened the independence of a generation of elderly Americans. They had banked on aging in place rather than spending their late years in nursing homes, the report says. Facebook parent company Meta said Tuesday it has removed a coordinated campaign from China seeking to influence U.S. politics ahead of November's midterm elections. Meta said the small network was detected across multiple social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It targeted people on both sides of the political spectrum ahead of the November 8th contest. It is the first Chinese network targeting U.S. domestic politics to be taken down, according to Meta. The network also conducted anti-government activities in the Czech Republic. It criticized the state's support of Ukraine in the war with Russia and its impact on the Czech economy, according to Meta. the daughter of former Iranian President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, was arrested Tuesday evening. A report by the semi-official Tasnim news agency said Faizeh Hashemi was arrested by a security agency for instigating riots in Tehran. The 59-year-old women's rights activist has a history of run-ins with Iran security agencies for alleged anti-government activities. Tehran and other major Iranian cities have been rocked by angry protests since Mahsa Amini's death in police custody last week. Iran's Human Rights, a Norway-based organization, said at least 76 protesters have been killed by Iranian security forces over 11 days. Protests have now reached Iranian Kurdistan, as Amini was Kurdish. Balochistan province in Iran is also seeing protests in solidarity with the Sunni Kurd counterpart. Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan signed a joint protocol on the demarcation of their border on Monday. According to a statement by the Kyrgyzstan government, the protocol is the start of the procedure for reaching an agreement. This would be for a new draft for certain sections of the Kyrgyz-Uzbek state border. In March 2021, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan agreed on a treaty to end the long-running dispute over the border. It stretches more than 800 miles but is not clearly demarcated. Bringing more news stories after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. Let's stand with those who stand with us. I'm talking about Nadine Maenza. For 2 years in a row, Nadine Maenza as chair led USCIRF to ask the US government to sanction India and declare it is a country of particular concern. It was USCIRF, by the way, whose recommendation was used to ban Modi for 10 years from entering the United States of America. Join hand in recognizing USCIRF and honoring Nadine Maenza on October 2nd. Justice for All is a Muslim-led human rights organization with a 30 years track record. You have heard of name Burma Task Force, That's justice for all. We started 30 years ago when Bosnian genocide was going on, and working together we stopped that. Join hand today and be there on October 2nd to stop genocide and protect Muslim minorities around the world. Scan this code on the screen to register or visit justiceforall.org/VA. Assalamu alaikum. To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. Rights groups are urging other countries to follow the lead of the US and other Western nations in calling out China's human rights record in East Turkestan. A draft resolution on the issue was presented Monday at the 51st session of the United Nations Human Rights Council. The groups are asking the United Nations Human Rights Council to hold a debate in its next session in 2023 on the subject. The move was backed by Britain, Canada, Sweden, among other Western countries. More than 60 organizations from 20 countries welcomed the draft. In a joint statement, they said they will continue to push for further action following last month's UN assessment on China's treatment of Uyghurs in East Turkestan. The Chinese government calls the region Xinjiang. The UN Human Rights Council sessions end October 7th. The Council is expected to vote on the draft resolution next week on the occupied territory. Pope Francis will visit Bahrain, home to the biggest Catholic church in the Arabian Peninsula, in November, the Vatican said Wednesday. Francis will be the first pope to visit the majority Muslim Gulf country. Details of the visit will be released at a later date. The pontiff is likely to visit the cavernous Cathedral of Our Lady of Arabia in Awali, which opened its door last year. The modern-style church lies about a mile from a large mosque in the south of the state. It was built to serve the country's roughly 80,000 Catholics, mainly workers from Asia, mostly Indian and Philippine. Abdoulaye Maïga, Mali's interim prime minister, accused France of having abandoned the nation in mid-air while speaking before the UN General Assembly in New York. Maïga, who is overseeing Mali's political transition, says that the Malian people fully supported the government in rebuilding of Mali and the return to constitutional order.
Eu égard à la gravité des faits commis par la junte française, le Mali, dans sa lettre en date du 15 août 2022, a demandé la tenue d'une réunion d'urgence du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies. Cette réunion a pour objet de permettre au Mali de présenter les éléments de preuve en sa possession, démontrant que l'armée française a agressé en de maintes reprises mon pays.
Moscow's foreign ministry Wednesday called on US President Joe Biden to answer if Washington is behind 3 reported gas leaks on the Nord Stream pipelines from Russia to Europe. 3 unexplained gas leaks preceded by 2 explosions occurred on the Baltic Sea's Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines on Monday. Spokeswoman Maria Zakharova posted a video on social media of Biden saying, "We will bring an end to Nord Stream 2 if Russia tanks cross into Ukraine's border." She said on February 7th, Biden said Nord Stream would be finished if Russia invaded Ukraine. Zakharova said Biden is obliged to answer the question of whether the US carried out its threat. India has banned 9 Muslim-led organizations, including the All India Imams Council, an affiliate of the Popular Front of India, which has also been banned. Among the blacklisted groups are the National Confederation of Human Rights Organization. The government banned the groups under the controversial Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Following the move, former Bihar Chief Minister Lalu Prasad Yadav on Wednesday demanded a ban on Hindu militant group Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or RSS. Yadav called the RSS a Hindu extremist organization that deserved to be banned. Yadav said that the government is targeting Muslim organizations. Jamaat-e-Islami Hind criticized the government, saying banning an organization is neither a solution nor does it suit a democratic society. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has condemned a recent attack by armed bandits on worshippers at a mosque in Nigeria's Zamfara state. At least 15 people were reportedly killed in the attack. USCIRF Commissioner Frederick Davey said that the attack is just the latest demonstration of how insecurity in Nigeria erodes freedom of religion or belief. He said all Nigerians have the right to gather for services and worship together without fear of attack. Earlier this month, armed assailants kidnapped dozens of worshippers attending another service at a mosque in Zamfara. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Assalamu alaikum!
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. 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 And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam is and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is very smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Abdul Malik Mujahid. Muslims get bombarded with negative news, so good things which we do remain unknown. For example, do you know that Muslim Americans helped stop the genocide in Bosnia? Recently, Muslim Americans defeated Apple, Coca-Cola, Nike, and their lobbies to get a law passed through Congress about Uyghurs. Do you also know that it were Muslim Americans who work hard and smart to block Modi from entering the United States for 10 years? Yes, Alhamdulillah. All of that is your credit. Let's keep doing the good thing. Alhamdulillah, 3 achievers of our community are coming to Chicago to help strengthen Justice for All. Justice for All is a human rights organization run by Muslims based in Chicago. We will honor Arsalan Suleiman, a young person raised in our communities who filed a lawsuit on Burma because of the Rohingya genocide. We'll also honor Ambassador Rashad Hussain, raised in our communities, married in Chicago, and who is now the ambassador at large for international religious freedom. In addition, we will honor the latest commissioner of USCIRF, Imam Muhammad Majid, for his relentless support for Burma Task Force. Please join me. Let's come together on October 9th in Chicago. Scan this code to register or visit justiceforall.org/Chicago. Assalamu alaikum. To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. To discuss the current situation of Hurricane Ian, let's go to Edward Ahmed Mitchell. Over to you, Edward.
Thank you, Hena. And now we move to the discussion of Hurricane Ian, which, as you all know, hit the state of Florida just hours ago and is now working its way across the state and heading for more U.S. states. We wanted to learn about what this hurricane is doing to the population there, why people were so concerned about it, and what is causing these hurricanes to happen apparently more frequently and perhaps more severely. To discuss these and other issues, we're very happy to welcome our guest for today's program, distinguished professor, educator, expert, Mr. Hugh Willoughby. Mr. Willoughby is the Distinguished Research Professor at the Department of Earth and Environment at the Institute of Environment, Florida International University. He studies tropical cyclone structure, intensity, and impacts. He has flown more than 400 missions into the eyes of hurricanes. I said that correctly, 400 missions into the eyes of hurricanes, and is here to live to tell us about it. And typhoons as a meteorologist for the federal government. Mr. Willoughby was a research meteorologist at the Hurricane Research Division of NOAA's Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory, and he's done other amazing work that is going to be of great expertise and help to us during our conversation today. Professor Willoughby, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Very happy to have you. So first, I just introduced a bit about your work, and I'm sure there's so much more to it, but can you tell us what made you interested in this field and what possessed you to go flying into the eyes of hurricanes, and tell us about that experience?
Well, the real story is I was in the Navy at the Naval Postgraduate School when Hurricane Camille happened. And they were looking for people with more education than judgment. And I fit the bill, so I volunteered. And the next thing I knew, I was flying into typhoons. And then after I got out of the Navy, I came to the University of Miami and to politic for a flying job with NOAA, and I did that for 27 years. Richard Bach, the author of the Jonathan Livingston Seagull, once said, there's nothing inherently dangerous about flying. It's when you stop flying that bad things happen to you. And my experience of life has said that that's true.
That's beautiful. So, Professor, tell us about what is going on with Hurricane Ian. You have literally seen many hurricanes and typhoons. What was so concerning about this particular hurricane? Why did people so worried? Just tell us about it.
Well, really, the beginning is in geology. The state of Florida is a platform of limestone, and it's tipped down very slightly to the west, which means that there's deep water off the east coast and a large expanse of shallow water off the west coast. And in addition, there's a warm ocean current that flows. flows like a hairpin turn, the water that will become the Gulf Stream. And so we've got intensity and the stress of the wind acts at the surface, but if it's spread through a shallow depth, you get more storm surge and less depth. And so we've got high surge, low topographic relief on land, and potential for a lot of intensity. And they all came together in Ian. It's not quite the worst case, but it sure is a pretty bad case.
Understood. So now that you're seeing some of the devastation, the impact, what's happening on the ground? It sounds like maybe it was not as bad as it could have been, perhaps. But tell us, what are you thinking about what's happening on the ground?
Well, there's a lot of property damage. And there are three damaging weather elements. Wind is what everybody thinks of, but storm surge, salt water from the ocean, and fresh water from the rainfall, actually those three elements account about equally, but it's moving water that kills people. Few people die from the wind, but most of them drown. And the concern is, did people get out before the surge came in? And I'm hopeful that the emergency managers did a good job and people here listen to their advice, and the loss of life will be small, but it'll be good to know one way or the other. But the property damage is probably going to be horrendous. I would guess at $100 billion. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but that's what it looks like.
Gotcha. Now, Professor, tell us this, is this normal? Obviously, hurricanes happen every year, and that's been the case for, I assume, most of history. But are we seeing any increase in the number of hurricanes that are hitting states like Florida, and any increase in their severity? Or is this just traditional?
Well, if you look at the last now 6 years, starting in 2017 through this year, there's been something memorable in the Atlantic Basin, either in the U.S. or on the adjacent islands every year. That is unusual. What we have is normally, through my experience and before, we'll have two seasons that are bad, and then go back to, maybe one or two memorable storms, and then a long time between, and then another one or two. But we've got 5 years with a major hurricane landfall and expensive landfall. Now, not all in the U.S. There was Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas, and Hurricane Maria, which is U.S. territory, but not the continental U.S. where we have good statistics. But I think the argument can be made that it's global warming. And if we look at the history since 1900, where we have not good but acceptable statistics, we get 1% of increase. 1% hurricane damage increases 1% a year. But that doesn't sound like much, but 1% a year over 122 years works out to a factor of 3. That's corrected for inflation and all sorts of other economic factors. So you can make a case now that we're seeing the effect of global warming. And of course, there are other phenomena, droughts, floods, paradoxically, wildfires worldwide. So it's happening.
Gotcha. So what can people do to prepare for this sort of thing? Is that, barring some radical change in our government's policy and the governments around the world able to reverse what's happening with climate change in the short term, is there anything that states can do to prepare better for hurricanes like this? Or is it just batten down the hatches and get out of Dodge and hope? Or is there something else that can be done in the short term?
Well, we can build for the wind and avoid the immediate coastal area. I think the idea of, for instance, you have the hotels built on the beach, instead of building them on the beach, build them the other side of the strip that goes along the beach and have a maintained dune line on the beach. But if the sea rises as much as it could in the next 100 or 200 years, a lot of coastal real estate is going to be underwater.
Well,
and normally underwater.
Yeah. That's disturbing to think about. Now, Professor, the aftermath of a hurricane, right? When it's all over, what kind of damage do we usually see? You mentioned the property damage, obvious loss of life. And you estimate your fear is that this could be up to $100 billion in damage. How long does it take to recover from something like this, and what goes into that in terms of federal state partnership and that sort of thing?
Well, my wife and I were my family went through Andrew. We had a daughter who was 6 months old.
Wow.
My wife had just had major surgery.
Wow.
And it was for us, and our house was damaged, but not blown off the roof. And I'd done this for a living for a while, so I knew what to do in the aftermath. And we came back to more or less the same as we were before in 6 months. There were people that it took, there were people who left, people that we knew. There were people that it took a year or two. I think the damage from Ian is going to be more extensive. It'll probably be spread over a bigger area. And the people whose houses are lightly damaged will be able to come back fairly quickly. Others a year 6 months to a year. And, like has happened in South Dade and Homestead, they never came back. The airbase closed. It was devastating to the economy. It was 5 years. Well, some of it hasn't recovered even to this day. It's not the same as it was.
It's just fascinating to think about the long-term effects of a hurricane. We think about the immediate stuff, but you have to stop and think about the long-term effect that this has. So, Professor Willoughby, final thoughts as we close here. The hurricane, I understand, is now moving potentially along the eastern seaboard of the United States, heading towards perhaps South Carolina, North. Can you tell us where it looks like it's going, what we might be seeing next?
Well, you're right. It's headed for South Carolina. The question is, how strong is it going to be? But probably the big source of damage in the Carolinas, it'll probably be no more than a Category 2. And then when it comes on shore in the Carolinas, it'll be mainly a rain event. And that's not to diminish the damage potential. But the Carolinas and the out to Cape Hatteras, they get about as many hurricanes as South Florida, but they're weaker, so that moving water is really the damaging weather element, whether freshwater, inland, or the storm surge.
Gotcha. Professor Willoughby, I know I said last question, but I have to ask you one more. I think my viewers will be upset, which is your experience flying over typhoons and hurricanes. Can you just give us a little taste of what that was like, the experience of it, the preparation for it? Just give us a little insight into what that's like, because most of us will never experience that in our life, and we don't want to. Tell us a bit about your memories.
The thing about it is, the flight crews, I was a scientist, I'm not a pilot. And the flight crews are very experienced, and they're very professional. They know what to expect. And, it's not a usual thing to be doing with an airplane, but I don't know anybody that's been killed doing it. There were people that were killed, but I used to come out to the Hurricane Center is here on our campus, and the lab where I worked was on Virginia Key. And I'd travel between them. I'd go out here to get a briefing and then go out to talk to the people that, my people that would fly with me. And then we'd go to the airport. And the most dangerous part of my day was merging onto I-95 to go to the lab. And I actually felt that it sounds like hyperbole, but it was the truth. Because I do know people that have been killed on I-95.
Yeah. As someone who's driven in that area, yes, I absolutely know what you mean. Good. Well, that's a fascinating experience that you have there, Professor, and we look forward to hearing more about it in the future, God willing. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you for your insight. And again, we hope we'll get some positive news that the community will rebuild as quickly as possible, that there hopefully will not be any further loss of life that we don't know about yet, and that those in South Carolina and elsewhere will be safe as well. But thank you, Professor Willoughby, for joining us and discussing this issue with us. We look forward to having you back in the future, God willing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Hena, we'll send it back to you.
Thank you so much, Edward. That's such terrible devastation. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.